Welcome back to Geeks and Gamers. My name is Gary Beekler, and today I come to you from geeksandgamers.com, and we are here to talk about the Orville. Yes, the science fiction show that is one of the best on television, in my opinion. Now, Jeremy hasn't had time to watch the show. He's an incredibly busy person, but his website, Geeks and Gamers, does cover it, and he says it gets a lot of traction. So I offered to do this video for him, and this is the third recording of this video. They haven't worked out very well, but I'm going to go just back to basics on this one and tell you about the show. I think I just tried to get a little too funny and fancy, and it just frankly didn't work out. Let's be honest, it just didn't work out, and I'm glad you're never going to see him. So what is the Orville? Well, it's created by Seth MacFarlane, Family Guy, Seth MacFarlane, a guy I didn't like. I don't like Family Guy. Until I saw the Orville. And the Orville, I wasn't sold on it right away, and I know I'm already probably not doing a great job of selling it, but it takes a little time to kick in. But once it does, it is truly a great show. Now, mind you, it is a network television show. So there are going to be progressive elements in it, but they are done the way you're supposed to do it, the way Star Trek The Next Generation did it, in allegory, telling these stories through aliens. Now, the show started out as a parody of Star Trek The Next Generation, and the reason it exists is because Seth MacFarlane had pitched a Star Trek show to CBS, and they told him to pound sand. Seth MacFarlane has made billions of dollars for Fox, so he asked them if he could make this show. They said yes, and it recently just got renewed for a third season. It's got quite a following, and I dare say it's got a better following than that current Star Trek show that I am not a huge fan of. You might have heard, Star Trek Discovery. I can't stand it. It's terrible. But the Orville is the Star Trek fans deserve, but can also be for people who weren't Star Trek fans. Now, if you're not a Star Trek fan and you're not a Seth MacFarlane fan, I don't think I'm going to be able to sell this show to you. So in the interest of making this as quick as a pitch as possible, I will tell you about the one thing in the show that consistently works: the characters. That's why I like it. Not every episode is 10 out of 10, but the characters put in great performances. It can be funny at times, it can be very serious, and it's a good sci-fi show. And we'll start out with Seth MacFarlane's Captain Ed Mercer, who is recently broken up with his wife and is emotionally devastated. He is normally a pretty good officer in the Planetary Union, and as a last-ditch effort to keep him around, Admiral Halsey gives him command of the USS Orville. But there is a kicker, and this starts out as the premise for the show. And what's the kicker? Captain Ed Mercer's first officer just so happens to be his ex-wife, Commander Kelly Grayson, who secretly requested that he get the job to Admiral Halsey to keep him afloat, because secretly they still like each other very much as friends and possibly still love each other. Now, the best part about this show is they don't really hang this over every episode. This is the premise to start out the show, but they don't really focus on it or obsess on it too long. They revisit it here and there, but it's just right. It's not too much, and it doesn't take over the show, because usually I hate this kind of stuff in TV, and it's done pretty well here. But she's played brilliantly by Adrienne Palicki, who you might recognize as Wonder Woman in David Kelly's Wonder Woman, or Mockingbird from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. The women in this show are written like women, not planks of wood. They actually have personalities. They're actually fallible. They're actually human beings. And it's a refreshing thing to see in this show. Another thing I might add is this is a show that respects the fandom, and I will get to that towards the end of the video. But let's get to the next cast member, who is one of my favorites, Bortus. Bortus is played brilliantly by Peter Maitland, and he is a Moclan, which is essentially the Klingons of the Orville. They are an all-male race. The reason they're an all-male race is their civilization evolved on a very hostile planet. Now, there are female Moclans. It's 1 in a million as the series starts, and as you can imagine, there are many stories with many current issues told through the Moclans. Some people think they dwell on these a bit too much, but there's an actual arc within the first 2 seasons, a beginning, middle, and end, that tells some sometimes heavy-handed but also thought-provoking stories that one should consider. None of it is really cutting edge, but they do show multiple sides of an argument in these stories, and that I do appreciate. Then we have Dr. Claire Finn, who is played by Penny Johnson-Gerald, and you might recognize her from 24 or Deep Space Nine. She is the single mom on the ship, is one of the more evolved characters on the show. Believe it or not, they have a black female who isn't just the whammon of science. She's actually funny, she has a personality, and she gets into some very interesting relationship issues. One of my, again, favorite characters. Again, a well-rounded, real character. Yes, I know. Saying that out loud sounds pretty lame. Part of YouTube is doing that, but considering the current environment in Hollywood, it has to be praised when somebody actually writes a human character like an actual human being. Now, there is a comedy duo on this show, although they are put in mostly serious situations, but when they are together, they are brilliant, and we will start out with the first part of this, and the only criticism I will have of the show is there's not enough of John Lamar, who starts out as a navigator, but his position evolves over the course of the show. And again, I don't want to spoil anything. He is played by Jay Lee. He is brilliant in this show. And again, there's just not enough of him. I dare say that this is the most popular character on the Orville, and it is my favorite character. Yeah, I do like all the characters. There's no character I don't like in this show, but this is by far my favorite. Gordon Malloy, played by Scott Grimes. He is pure comedy all the time. Again, he is put in serious situations sometimes, and he does it very, very well. And that was mostly done in season 2. Again, I don't want to spoil anything, but when he is paired up with Jay Lee, it is pretty brilliant. But when he is by himself, he is the charm. He is the heart of the show. Everybody loves Gordon. He is the best pilot in the Planetary Union, but he has self-disciplinary problems and relationship problems. And as I remind everybody, this is a parody, but a parody is not necessarily an unoriginal thing. Parodies can evolve into their own thing. I give you The Venture Brothers, one of the best shows on television, started out as a Johnny Quest parody and has turned into its own show. And I think that's what's happening here with the Orville. And we have Isaac, who is essentially the Data of the Orville. But they've done something very interesting with him that I cannot spoil. But he is from a planet called Kalon. They are an artificial intelligent species, but they are sentient, or are they? We're not really sure. He is placed on the Orville as basically an envoy from Kalon to study biological life forms. The reason the Interplanetary Union allows Isaac on board the Orville is in hopes to bring Kalon into the Union, the extremely advanced, the decades, possibly centuries more advanced Kalon. He also has the single best character arc in the first 2 seasons, and it culminates with 2 of the best episodes of the show so far. We round out the cast with Chief Security Officer Alara Katane, played by Halston Sage, who, well, one of the few of you who actually saw Dark Phoenix, you might have noticed her as Dazzler. Now, she possesses incredible strength and endurance due to her homeworld, Zalea, having high gravity. And it just so happens Halston Sage dated Seth MacFarlane, and you're going to see a bit of a pattern here because the other Chief Security Officer, Tala Kayali, is played by somebody who used to date Seth MacFarlane, Jessica Zor. She is also Zalaean, but she has a very different personality from Alara. She's a little more in charge. Now, the Zalaean people are more academic, so they don't have a military, so people who join the Interplanetary Union from their planet are looked down upon, which makes for some interesting drama between Alara and her family, but Tala doesn't have to deal with that. We have Clyden, who is Bortus's mate, and by the way, the Moclan species lays eggs. He is played by Chad L. Coleman. You might recognize him from The Expanse. The Expanse is probably the next video I'll do for Geeks and Gamers if Jeremy lets me, if he likes this one. We also have Ty and Marcus, who are Claire's kids, and we have Yaphet, played by Norm Macdonald, who is essentially a sentient ball of snot. And I love to point out that this sentient ball of snot has more character depth than all the characters put together in Star Trek Discovery. Yaphet hits on Claire quite a bit, but he also goes on a pretty serious die-hard adventure in one of the better episodes of the Orville. It also has some pretty amazing guest stars and cameos from Charlize Theron, Ted Danson, Liam Neeson, Victor Garber, Rob Lowe, Patrick Warburton, Jason Alexander, Kelly Hu, you might recognize her as Lady Deathstrike from X2, Marina Sirtis, Tim Russ, John Billingsley, F. Murray Abraham, Tony Todd. It's had a couple episodes directed by Jonathan Frakes, and of course, it is co-created and co-written by Brandon Braga of Enterprise. It's a show that deals with a lot of things that Star Trek The Next Generation either wouldn't or couldn't. Anything from social media or porn addiction. But the one episode I will highlight without spoilers is about a girl, and it's about the Moclan race. Clyden and Bortus lay an egg, they have a kid, and it turns out to be one of those 1 in a million girls. I don't know, not too sure if the numbers are like that, but it's close to that. And what the Moclans do is they force a sex change to turn it into a boy so it won't be ostracized from their society. Without spoiling it, this deals with gender issues, cultural issues, and sovereignty issues. It shows all sides of the argument, and it doesn't necessarily give you the ending you expect. Yes, subverted expectations, but done very, very well. Another one of my favorites is Majority Rule, and yes, Black Mirror did cover the subject of a society run by social media, but Orville does it with a little more flair and fun. You might hear a word from a lot of Orville fans that you might not recognize or know what the hell they are talking about. It is called Gelogia. Well, Gelogia is taking a leak. Well, Moclans only take a leak once a year. It's a mixed parody of the over-pompous Klingon ceremonies coupled with Ponfar, which is what Spock has to do in Amok Time when Vulcans have to return to Vulcan to procreate, to get it on. Now, the villains of our story are another Klingon-type race called the Krill. They are a theocracy that worship the teachings of Avis, and they believe they are the only true sentient race. They believe all other species are basically animals. One of the best Krill episodes actually incorporates a Billy Joel song, and I still like it. Yes, I can't stand Billy Joel, but it is still really well done. The two best episodes, Identity Part 1 and 2, I can't even tell you about. But I can tell you they have some of the best space battles I've seen on television in a long, long time. In my opinion, Seth MacFarlane had to pitch The Orville as a comedy to get the network to back it. I think he kind of BS'd him a little bit because while the first season does have more comedy in it than season 2, it is a serious science fiction show. Yes, they parody Star Trek shows, but they take them in a direction that Star Trek never went, and it will eventually turn into its own thing. It's already happening. We can see that within season 2. Season 2 has a more serious tone. There are some serious science fiction stories, and they are done very well. Not every episode is great, but they're all pretty good. There's no horrible episodes of The Orville, in my opinion. Another thing that has to be said is they treat the fans right. When CBS took over Star Trek, the first thing they did was shut down the fan films. Now, they worked out a deal, but you can't have a fan film for longer than 30 minutes, and it has to be approved by CBS. Now, imagine people love your property so much that they want to make more of it. They just want to feel a part of it. They put in their own money, their own time, and it's free advertising, and it's also proof of a healthy franchise. If you have a franchise that people are out there making fan films of, man, there is companies that would kill for that. So Seth MacFarlane embraces it. There was a group called Stage 9, and they did a simulation of the Enterprise, and that's all it was. You walk through the sim, and you get to experience the Enterprise. The graphics were okay, but it was done out of love. They didn't make any money off it whatsoever, and CBS shut it down. So you know what they did? They changed their name to Messy Desk, and now they have an Orville sim. You know what Seth MacFarlane said? Cool, rock on. That's what you're supposed to say. And as much criticism as George Lucas gets, he allowed a lot of fan projects. He allowed people to make stuff up to a certain number and sell it like t-shirts and prints. Lucasfilm sure isn't doing that. So hopefully the people who own these franchises will recognize them when most of the time when people are making this stuff, they aren't profiting. They're doing it because they love it. And certainly if they're profiting off it, sue them, of course. But that's not the case with the vast majority of Star Trek fan films like Star Trek Continues, which is brilliant with the great Vic Mignogna. Well, that's my pitch, and I hope I've convinced a couple of you to check out The Orville. First thing, it's not behind a paywall. It's on free television. It's on Fox. Season 3 is not going to be till 2020, so you have plenty of time to catch up. Unfortunately, there isn't a lot of physical media. I think there's only a DVD, but you can find it on Hulu, I believe. It's also on Sling and YouTube TV. I want to thank Jeremy for allowing me to make this video. I love Geeks and Gamers. I love the Geeks and Gamers crowd. You guys are brilliant. I've guested on the High Council a couple times, and a good time was had by all. And we will get Jeremy on my channel as soon as possible. Everybody have a great day, and may the free folk sing songs of your greatness. Jaloja!